In this short video, I'm going to talk about the process involved with oxyacetylene welding. First up, you need to prepare for the work. So you need to know basically you need to know what the task is that has to be done by acquiring the plans or the specifications or the job pack from supervisors or the builder, or whoever it may be, on site or in the workshop. You also need to understand the health and safety requirements associated with oxyacetylene welding and the environmental impacts. Firstly, the health and safety hazards. There are a number of hazards. The main ones being burns, fumes, infrared rays that are given off by the light, and obviously compressed gases. You don't want yourself to get burnt or anybody around you working in the area where you're welding. Touching the hot metal, you can get burnt, or hot torches. They can tend to get fairly hot at the ends. Sparks from when you're actually welding coming off the material. The filler rods also can get extremely hot on the tip, and obviously the flame itself coming out of the end of the blowpipes and the tip. The light gives off infrared, so infrared is another health and safety hazard, and it comes from the bright light of the flame. Gives off infrared rays, and they can cause permanent damage to the welder's eyes or even people within the close vicinity. So operators need to wear the correct PPE for that, so I'll talk about that in a minute. Operators can also become fatigued due to long exposures to the heat and the flame. Compressed gases. The two gases, oxygen and the acetylene, are stored in high pressure cylinders, and they've got to be handled and stored correctly in accordance with the Australian standards and the supplier's guidelines. The cylinders should always be kept upright and secured when they're being stored, or secured in their carts or the trolleys. With the gases also, they should never ever be used for any other purpose other than for the oxyacetylene welding or cutting. Obviously we've talked about the dangers, where there's quite a lot. It's quite a high risk activity. So the PPE, you need to have full heavy cotton drill long pants and long sleeves, or even overalls, or non-flammable material. Work boots, obviously full leather uppers and heat resistant rubber soles. Welding gauntlets for your hands are a must. And for your face and your eyes, you can get goggles to protect your eyes, but also a full face screen, probably not a bad idea. And the lenses need to be correctly tinted. You need a 5 level tint minimum, or even a 6. That's to protect you from the infrared, the rays that the flame gives off. And back to the ventilation, even a respirator mask wouldn't be a bad idea in some circumstances. Also on the PPE, something to note is what's in your pockets. Something to think about or check. You don't want to damage anything in your pockets from the heat, and especially if you're a smoker, you don't want to keep any lighters in your pockets, because that can result in quite a dangerous situation. With the PPE, yeah, it's designed, you need it to protect yourself as the welder, and also people around you. So anybody working in the vicinity or around you must wear a minimum of safety glasses. Whilst welding, it's probably also recommended that you have a full leather apron. Wouldn't be a bad idea. We'll move on to planning the job before we even get started. You need to be conscious of other people working on the site or in the workshop that may be in the vicinity around you. You have to understand the task that needs to be done. You must protect other individuals as well, and other materials or anything that might be in the vicinity of where you'll be working. You don't want to cause burns or start fires or anything like that. So you can use screens. Screens are a good thing. Put up screens which block the light. They'll also stop sparks and things. And some welding sheets you could put down. So preparing the work area, make sure it's completely free of any obstacles, any flammable material, completely out of the way, at least 10 meters away. I even go as far as having an extinguisher on hand. Just wouldn't be a bad idea. And again, back to the ventilation, you've got to make sure your work site or your work area where you're performing the task is well ventilated. So when you're planning the task, again, you need to communicate with other trades or any other workers that might be on the site or in the workshop. Communicate with them when you intend to do the job and what job it is you're doing, the area you'll be welding, screens that you'll be putting up, basically everything you intend to do. Make sure it fits in with other people and it's okay to do it. You can move on to preparing your materials, your welding materials that you might be using depending on the job, and getting the welding equipment itself ready. So identified from the requirements or the specs or the job pack that you may have been given from supervisors, or you can identify what type of weld you need to do, or whether it's a fusion or a fill, or whether it's sheet metal, any plates that you might need. Also select your filler rods if you're doing a filler weld. Once you understand what the job, you know what the job is and you know what you need to do, you can then prepare the material or prepare the piece you'll be working. So depending on its condition, you might have to grind it clean or use a solvent cleaner. Possibly grind out a V-channel if you're doing a filler weld or a butt weld or something. You'll also need to select the size tip that you'll be using depending on the type of weld that you're doing, whether it's on thick plate or thin sheet metal and whatnot. The tip size have to be the correct tip size, have to be selected. So use your charts or your tables to determine that. Okay, so setting up the welding equipment. This is crucial that it's done right, because there can be some bad consequences if things go wrong. So firstly, you want to inspect all of your equipment. So you have your cylinders, the valves at the top, your regulators, and then you got your flashback arresters and your pipes, your blow pipes, and your tips. So inspect all of your gear, check make sure it's hasn't been damaged in transport, or it's in good working condition. It's absolutely crucial that it's been well maintained and kept clean, especially around the oxygen cylinder. So any oil or grease or anything like that can actually become flammable or explosive under pressure mixed with oxygen. So that's vital that it's kept clean and inspected before you start. Make sure your regulators are completely released. Which is closed. So then you can assemble. We can assemble the equipment. So firstly, you'll take the caps off the cylinders. They're protective caps that are screwed over, and fit the regulators and tighten them with the spanners supplied. Don't over tighten these because the brass fittings get damaged. After you've inspected inside on the seat to make sure there's no dirt and dust in there. Then fit the pipes. Oxygen pipes or hoses will be blue or black, and there'll be a standard thread, a standard right hand thread. That's at the regulator end, the regulator screwing on, where the blowpipes fixed to the hoses. It'll all be standard right hand thread, but with the acetylene, which is the fuel, they will all be left hand thread, so that this can't be confused, you can't mix them up. So fit your hoses and then fit your blowpipe on the end. Again with the acetylene, do the same. Fit your regulator, make sure it's completely released. Check for any dirt and dust in there. Screw your hose on, and then fit your blowpipes to the ends. Make sure your blowpipe valves are completely closed, and then you want to check for leaks. So release the cylinder valves a little bit, maybe 50 to 75 kPa. With the blowpipe valves closed, shut off the cylinders again and look for a drop in pressure on the regulator gauge. Now if there's a drop in pressure, that might indicate that there's a leak somewhere on one of the threads, one of the fixings. If it drops in pressure, you can use a soapy solution. So with a brush it on, or spray it on with a soapy solution, but never ever check for leaks with a flame. It's dangerous, never be done. So just check with soapy water if you think there's a leak. If the pressures don't drop, then leak apparent, so you can carry on. So that should be everything set up. The regulators are in, the flashback arrestor's on, then the hoses will take you to your blowpipes, and then you'll have your tip fixed to the end of your blowpipe. So once you've checked that there's no leaks, you can then set your cylinders, open the valves quarter turn to a half turn, and then you can adjust the regulators to achieve about a 50 kPa on the oxygen and the acetylene to start with. It's important to note that you should never use the acetylene over 100 kPa. It's dangerous, completely dangerous, the way that the acetylene is stored in the tank and whatnot. So it's vital, and it should be red on the gauge. So you never go into that red zone. Stay away from it. Never really go over 100 kPa. You should never have a need to. So lighting the flame. So you should always use a striker, a flint striker, to light the flame, and nothing else. So lighting up, you'll use the valves on the blowpipes. So firstly, open the acetylene up about a quarter of a turn, and then light with the striker. You should get like quite a yellowy flame, probably a bit of soot coming off, and some feathers at the end of the flame. Once this is lit, then open up the oxygen valve on the blowpipes about a quarter of a turn, and the flame should become quite sharp. You then need to adjust. You need to adjust the flame to achieve a neutral flame. There's a number of different flames. So there's a carbonizing flame. It's got a couple of other terms, and an oxidizing flame. So they're used for certain other specific jobs or metals. But generally speaking, with mild steel most of the processes that would be welding with. You want to achieve a neutral flame. So to do this, you adjust the valves on your blowpipes back so that the cone, the inner cone, the bright part reduces back all the way back down towards the tip. So just sticking out of the tip should get you a pretty good neutral flame. Once you've got your neutral flame, you're basically ready to perform your weld. Everything's set up, ready to go. You know what you're trying to achieve. Your area's safe. You've got the correct PPE on, so you're ready to go. So just before you start welding, it's probably good practice to shout out that you're welding, to let anybody know in the vicinity. So then you want to warm the metal. You want to preheat where you're going to weld, and slowly start to create a puddle. You want to hold the tip just a couple of mil up off the metal. So you want to create a puddle of molten metal, which is where you're going to then introduce your filler rod slowly as you push forwards with your weld, depending on the type of weld that you're going to be doing. Add the filler rod and sort of work the puddle, work it. You don't want to leave it, depending on your material, you don't want to let the puddle get too big, because the bigger the puddle, generally the deeper, more penetration you get, so you don't want to blow through the material, create a hole. You might need to adjust the temperature of your flame if you can't achieve the desired puddle, so maybe add a bit more fuel to increase the heat, and again then just adjust that, keep your neutral flame. Once your weld is done and you've completed the task, you turn off the torch, or you might want to stop and start in between. So the procedure for that is always to shut off the acetylene first on the blowpipes, and then the oxygen. You might need to clean your tip with cleaning drills or whatnot. Once your weld is finished, you'll need to clean up the piece, clean up the area, shut down the equipment. So you let your piece cool, you let your weld cool, and depending on the type of weld again that you've done, you might want to chip away the slag, a little chipper hammer or whatnot, and inspect the work. So then once you're done, you want to clear all your tools away, get the area tidied up, put things away, remove any scrap or any waste that might be left over, anything that's been cut down, or recycle it or bin it in the appropriate places depending on the job site or the regulations. You need to shut off your gas cylinders in the correct order, ready to be stored away, and you'll want to clean your equipment. You clean your tips, or clean the regulators and the threads. Again, back to the grease. It's extremely important, no grease and oil is left on any of the equipment. Close off the acetylene regulator valve, and then close off the oxygen regulator valve, and then close off both of the cylinders. And then you want to open the oxygen blowpipe to drain out any excess gas in the hose and the blowpipes. Then close off the oxygen blowpipe again once the pressure in the regulator gauge is reached 0, and then you're good to release the oxygen regulator fully. Then you want to repeat that step again for the acetylene. So you'll close off the regulator valve, and then close off the cylinder, and then at the other end of the hose you can open up the blowpipe acetylene valve. Obviously, again, make sure you're in a well ventilated area with you don't really smoking or have any light sources around. let that drain off till your gauge reaches 0 again, and then close it off, and then release the regulator again to its relaxed position, and then you're good to take off the blowpipes, take off the hoses, take the regulators off, give it all a good clean, check it all over, and store it correctly. At the end of the job, I guess you might need to document the work that's been done for the job pack, or for supervisors, or note down the procedure that was taken, assess the work that you've done, and make sure it was in accordance with the requirements, and then that's the end of it. That's oxyacetylene welding done. So I'm trying to think if I've missed anything. My brain's going a million miles an hour. Pretty sure I covered everything. The safety's really the biggest thing, because it can be dangerous if it's done wrong. So yeah, the PPE, the safety procedures, the starting up and the closing down procedures are pretty vital, that you stick to those standards to keep yourself and others around you in the vicinity safe. So thank you very much. I think that's pretty good. I hope I haven't forgotten anything.